Now when you run into rubble in the ditch, particularly we're talking about rocky ground, when you run into rocky ground, then it's a real good idea to bed it. In fact, for plastic, it's imperative that you bed the pipe in main lines. Because if you have a rock sitting down under the pipe with the pipe sitting right on the rock, over time it's going to wear a hole in the pipe wall. Because that PVC pipe is sitting there underground, and as water flows down it, it's constantly vibrating. Now this is exaggeration, but if it's vibrating over time, this is a rock leaning against a piece of plastic, the rock wins. It's much more durable than the plastic, yeah. And it's going to wear a hole through that plastic over time, because that pipe's just sitting there vibrating ever so slightly, and it just sits on that rock and it works on that rock, and over time it'll finally wear a hole right through the pipe. Then you got yourself a leak. Now bedding material can be anything 3/4 inch or less in diameter material. So you go in and put in gravel and use 3/4 minus gravel, it makes a great bedding material. In fact, many places that'll be the spec. Use 3/4 inch minus gravel. Now we say, well, you're putting rock all over the pipe, but they're small enough not to have enough mass to ever wear into the pipe. 3/4 inch minus is a great fill, or anything smaller. Obviously sand is a great bedding material, just straight sand. It's a fabulous bedding material. Again, you're looking for a product that's relatively inexpensive. If you have soil, clean soil available, that would work great too. What you need is you need about 4 inches of bedding material of this 3/4 minus material all the way around the pipe on all sides. At least 4 inches. That's to keep any big rocks from working their way in over time. You give yourself a little cushion, because you know, once you have to put it on the top, on the bottom, lay the pipe, then bed around the sides and over the top of the pipe. Then you can put the parent material, whatever you've dug out of the ditch, back over that. And you know, if you're over here in Milton Free Water, it's going to be all kinds of rock you're going to put back over it. But in the meantime, you better have yourself a bunch of bedding material, because a lot of that ground over at Milton is just like digging through a creek bed. Same on this campus. This whole campus is just solid rock. And you dig through here and put a main line in, you better have some bedding material. So our loop main line out around the little golf course out here is all bedded. We use sand. That was the least expensive material at the time for us to use. It has to be a certain depth too. That main line, according to the size, it has to be deep enough so that it won't get crushed when you drive over the top of it. Okay? And that totally depends on the diameter of the pipe. The smaller the diameter, the shallower it can be as you drive over the top of it with a tractor or whatever, a truck or a pickup or whatever, and the crushing force going down on it and will be less demanding as closer you get to the surface with smaller pipe. And there is a certain minimum depth for any size pipe. Now we can go out here and put laterals down 1 foot deep if they're 1 inch pipe, and we can drive over it with about anything and it's not going to damage that pipe. But if we had an 8-inch pipe and only put it 1 foot deep and then drove a semi over the top of it in a regular silt loam soil, it's going to collapse it. It'll crush it right on the spot, because there's a big hollow under there, and when those tires go over it, there's nothing to support the load in the semi, and it's going to crush it. Now we put that 8-inch pipe 3 feet deep and cover it with soil. Now all of a sudden we have all the soil pyramid build up on top of it, and it can support it. So, and then there are times when we have to worry about the frost line, but most irrigation systems we purge before the winter comes. In some areas it'd be prohibitive to put it below the frost line. You'd be down so dang deep you wouldn't ever want to try to do the excavation. You just have to know you're going to drain them before the freeze comes. Yeah, there's areas of the country you got to go 6 feet Well, that would be one expensive main line. It'd be pretty prohibitive to put them in that deep. So you make amends to drain them. So that's the needs of as far as bedding and burying the pipe. And each size, and it somewhat, the soil structure determines how deep it can be too. Certain soils have more strength than others. So a good heavy clay soil, you don't have to bury the pipe quite as deep to still get the same stability from the top. The more sandy it is, the more potential it will crush it. So you have to have a little more depth to a sandy soil over a given diameter pipe. Most pipe, we say, hey, if it's a main line, at least 2 feet deep. That's a pretty good rule of thumb. And then when you get into bigger pipe, you have to go a little deeper.